reason why Disney has a knack for making you feel sad at the beginning of their movies. The Lion King, Bambi, Frozen, or one of my most favorite movies, Up. Walt Disney said he puts his characters through tragic situations because it forces us to root for them. Who doesn't want to see Simba face his childhood trauma and reclaim his pride? Of course we want to see Anna fall in love after being left alone her whole life, or Elsa to take hold of who she truly is when she was forced to hide it. And poor Carl. How can you not want him to make it to the falls and go on his big adventure after we just watched his sweet wife go through the heartbreak of losing their baby and then she dies? Come on! Those stories are brutal. What all of their journeys have in common, though, is that they had to get up from their tragic beginnings, look around, and say, I don't know what's coming next, but I know I have to move forward into the unknown. Go ahead and sing the song if you need to. I understand. Our heroes faced an unknown future. Who will I be? Where will I go? How will I ever get there? Will I fail? Of course, like all good movies, these stories have happy endings. The hero figures out who they are and what their goal is, and they have a band of cute sidekicks to get them there. And we get to leave singing the songs and feeling good about ourselves. But when we are living our stories, facing our own unknown situations, we don't get to see the ending. We don't get to skip the sad parts because Mufasa will always make me cry. We have to live our stories as they happen, and that can be really, really scary. At this point, your group is going to discuss some questions. They'll be on your screen as you take a few minutes to talk. What's the most tragic Disney story to you? You have plenty to choose from. If you were a hero in a Disney movie, what part of the story are you in right now? Are you in the hopeful beginning where everything is perfect, in the middle of a tragedy, facing the bad guy, finding your path? Where are you? When I was 12, I was faced with my own unknown story. My mom died. Out of nowhere. It was a freak medical thing that none of us saw coming. One day I was just living my life, playing with my friends, going to school. Everything was normal. And then the next, well, I had no idea what was going to happen next. How could I live without my mom? Would I forget her? Would I ever stop crying? Who would I become without her by my side? I wasn't even a teenager yet, and now I had to face the rest of my life without one of my parents. I wish I could have hit the fast forward button, but I was just left standing there, looking into an unknown future with a lot of questions for God. There's another story I have for you about two women looking into their own unknown futures. This one is just as true as my own because it comes from the Bible, which we know is true, from the book of Ruth. We'll start with Naomi. She was from Judah. She had her husband Elimelech. They had two sons, and they all worshiped Yahweh. You know him as God. But there was a famine in their country, and they were forced to leave to find food, and they ended up in a new place called Moab. Moab was pretty rough, and no one there worshiped Yahweh. They served and worshiped a false god. So here's Naomi and her little family in a brand new place, but they made the most of it and settled down. Her sons even married two Moabite women. And this is where we meet Ruth. She marries one of Naomi's sons. This is also where things go downhill. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, dies, which is really sad, but it'll be okay because she has her sons to take care of her. But then they both die. And so Naomi and her daughters-in-law not only face the grief of losing their husbands, but in those days, men were the only ones who owned anything. And they worked and basically took care of their families. So now these women were alone and broke. And everything that belonged to Elimelech now belongs to his next male relative. And Naomi has a choice to make. Her daughters are young and pretty, so they could stay and marry again. And Naomi, well, she knows that she won't be remarried anytime soon, so she's going to travel back home to Judah in hopes of finding a family that she can stay with. This uncertain situation could be handled in a different way today. How would Naomi deal with the loss of her husband if she were living right now in 2020? When it could have been the end of their relationship, Ruth makes a crazy decision. She doesn't want to stay in Moab. She loves Naomi and has been a part of her family for a decade. She chooses to leave her own country, her own people, her own God, and follow Naomi. She even says, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." She chooses Naomi. She chooses Yahweh. She chooses the unknown. And this starts to get even more crazy, so bear with me. Naomi needs to find Ruth a husband, or they will probably continue to be poor and have nowhere to live. She doesn't have the right to her husband's property unless Ruth marries someone else from Naomi's family. So Naomi finds out that she has like a cousin or uncle or someone, and his name is Boaz, who has a nice bit of land, some servants, a home. He's got some money and a reputation for being a pretty good dude. He follows God's law, and he makes sure that when his servants gather the harvest from his fields, they leave a portion so that the poor can come and collect his wheat for themselves. This is where Ruth makes her move. She hangs around Boaz's fields, collecting wheat, hanging out with the servant girls, and she catches Boaz's eye, and he finds out all about her story and realizes that he can help. Who are the people who have helped you face uncertain times? Who has shown you kindness when your life was chaotic? So for Boaz to help, he needs to redeem Elimelech's property. Remember, Naomi and Ruth are in a bad situation because all of Naomi's wealth now belongs to some random third cousin. And Naomi wants to keep Ruth in her family and have all of her stuff. And the only person who can make those things happen is Boaz. It would be like this. If my grandma had to sell her house because our grandpa died, and now she's broke and alone, the bank's coming to take the house, but then all of my relatives get together and buy her house from her just so that we can give it back to her. It's not for our benefit to buy the house, but for grandma's. That's redemption. So Boaz does this for Naomi. He buys back Elimelech's property so that he can give it back to Naomi, and so that he can marry Ruth and she can stay in their family. He pays the price to make sure that both Naomi and Ruth are taken care of and treated with kindness. If you lost everything, what would be the one thing you would fight the hardest to get back? At the end of Ruth's story, she's married, she has a son, her mother-in-law is going to be able to live a comfortable life, and she's living in Judah, worshiping Yahweh. Ruth got her Disney happy ending, but she wouldn't have gotten there if she had been paralyzed by fear, or if she had stayed in Moab and continued to worship a false god. She faced an unknown future, but God worked it out in the end. Not only for this family, but for all of us, because Ruth's bouncing baby boy would become the grandfather of King David, and we all know who would be born generations later through the family line of David: Jesus, our Redeemer. We know that God is good. Because of who God is, we can trust him with our unknown future. His ways and plans work out better than we could ever imagine. If I were to go back and tell my 12-year-old self what God had planned for my life after my mom died, I don't think I would have believed it. This isn't where I thought I would be, and this isn't the future I imagined for myself, but it is so much better. You don't know what your future is going to bring. Maybe you're facing a huge unknown right now. You just moved here, or you lost a friend. Everything is different, and school is weird. Your family is changing or going through something hard. A parent may have just lost a job, or maybe you have some doubts about your faith. Or you think God is calling you to something, but you aren't sure what that is or if you could really do it. Some of you are terrified of the unknown. You have your lives planned out to a T. You need this grade in this class, you need to be in this club or this sport. If you don't get into that college, you'll never forgive yourself. If you don't hit this goal by this time, your life is over. You worry about every detail and do whatever you can to control your future. But to embrace the unknown, you have to let go of those plans. You can't put your faith into the script you are writing. God's a better author than you are. He will write you a better ending than you could ever dream up. He's even a better storyteller than Walt Disney. He's written the greatest story ever told, and you get to be a part of it. But if you want in on the big finale, you have to embrace the unknown. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a worrier are you? And what type of things do you worry most about? What unknowns are you facing right now? What things in your life do you have a hard time entrusting to God? Take a few moments and pray with your group. Ask for peace in your uncertainty and to give God your future. scene.